Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Connect Church Discipleship Podcast. We're in Season 5, Episode 8. This season, we're looking at our emotions and our relationships and how they impact our spiritual formation. And we're currently on a series on healthy relationships. Last time, we saw how God has created us to relate for relationships and what it looks like to model that in a healthy way with God's attributes of being compassionate and gracious and slow to anger and rich in love. Today, we'll take it a little step further to what does it look like to have healthy relationships in some specific areas. And so Angela and Frank are both back with us again. So thank you guys for being here.
Of course.
Yep.
All
Good to be
right.
here.
Cool. So we want to get a little more specific today. And we mentioned some last time, but maybe we could just review it again. What are some signs that relationships, again, family, friends, coworkers, spouse, whatever, classmates, it could be anything. What are some signs that these relationships are unhealthy?
I think sometimes they want too much from us. Maybe they're rude. I think it's also tricky when you have a relationship where their expectations go up and down and you can't quite figure out what they want from you because sometimes it's too much, sometimes it's too little, or they become distant. I think then we are second guessing ourselves of what does this person want because they went distant. And I think it's a little tied to the up and down because then they come back and we're just can't quite figure out what they want from us.
Sure.
It's good. Stability.
Yeah.
Dependency, I guess, of knowing they'll be what they say.
Yeah.
I think I would still just say, again, respect boundaries. Again, right? Like, we all have different paces. We all have things that are important to us. Like, just because I set a boundary doesn't mean I don't love you. But, like, at the end of the day, if I'm not healthy, there are impacts on that, to my family, to our church, to my friendships. So, like, respect the boundaries I put in place for that. And then just healthy communication. Right, if we can't talk about deeper things in life, then is this a healthy relationship,
Yeah. Good. One of the things I think about too is just relationships could sometimes end up being transactional. It's like, hey, you do this, I do that, and sure, I guess there is some element of that within relationships. We help each other, but like when that's the motivation, that might be a sign something. I might be using this relationship just to get what I want. In that sense.
Which is a bummer, right? I think that's what culture tells us relationships are right now. Like, people are almost like a thing to discard once I get what I want.
Yeah.
And you can fill in the blank for the thing that you're looking for, but people are just a means to an end for me to get what my happiness, my joy, those things. So.
Absolutely. Okay, so Angela, I think you mentioned this in the last episode that sometimes we need relationships because we could be blind to like what's going on in our life, like we might not see it. So just kind of sticking with that idea of being blind to certain things. What are some reasons that we might be blind to a relationship actually being unhealthy in our life?
For me, I'm a people pleaser, so a lot of times for me, I don't want to rock the boat because I don't want to lose that relationship. So I think it's a willing blindness. Honestly, a lot of times I see the writing in the sand, but I'm so scared of losing that relationship that I take probably a lot more than I should sometimes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's good. I think for me, I'm a very, like, what I see is what I see kind of a thing. So it's like I'm literally blind sometimes because I only see certain things. And I think a lot of times, like, I'll neglect relationships and just not even realize it. So I just need people to be like, hey, what's up with that? And I'm like, oh, you're right.
Yeah. I think too, a blind spot for us can be we're seeing what was modeled for us, right? So if this was a blind spot for our family and others, like it can easily be a blind spot. Like, oh, we just think that's how it's supposed to function, right? Or maybe even we're afraid of losing the benefits of the relationship, right? Not necessarily the person, those kinds of things. So a lot of scripture actually speaks to relationships. It deals, the context of it is how we interact with one another, right? As a church, we're going through Sermon on the Mount, right? And this verse will come from there, Matthew 7:12. It says, "So in everything, do to others what you'd have them do to you, for this sums up the law and the prophets." And if you read how Jesus has summed up the law to that point in the Sermon on the Mount, like most of it deals with our interactions with other people, relationships. How does that look to be healthy? And so being healthy is going to be I'm loving others the way I would want myself to be loved, right? And having that. If we zip over to 1 Corinthians, it says this, "Just as a body, though one has many parts, but all its many parts form one body, so it is with Christ. If one part suffers, every part suffers with it. If one part is honored, every part rejoices with it. And so the context of this is Paul is telling the church how they each have these different spiritual gifts and they're to be used, and like every gift is important, and like don't discard some members. And so again, these healthy relationships, we're in this together. Scripture is speaking to that context. And then one more for us, Ephesians 5:21, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. And then following that, he gives instructions for marriage and parenting and work relationships. And it all starts with this submitting and honoring to the Lord. So again, we need to have healthy relationships. And so Scripture often does speak to this, right? It is the context of many things. And so we want to talk, just for the remainder of our time today, what are a few key things we can do to be healthy in our relationships with others? We might not be able to control the other person, but what can we do to be healthy? And so our first question, Angela, we'll start with you. What are a few key things we can do to be a healthy friend to other people?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can really, like Jesus likes to do, is just sum it up with love them well. And that's a lot of ways. There's physical, emotional, spiritual. And I think discernment really plays a part in this, because different friends are going to receive love the same way, but then also in different seasons, a friend may need something in a different way than they did, depending on what's going in their own life. And I think in the back of our minds, just remembering that this is probably going to require sacrifice.
That's good.
Being healthy and loving a friend well is probably not going to always be easy. There's going to be times when it is, but there's also going to be time when it requires something of us. It's for my own life, honestly, it seems more often than not, it's often not convenient. I feel like a little selfish saying that, but usually when something is going on that's a big deal in a friend's life is when I also have like a ton of things going on in my own life. And it's that decision to surrender my own priorities, what I have going on, and to make a choice to love them in that moment. But I think showing up when they need a friend is usually always worth whatever inconvenience that it brought me. And so, yeah, I think love is at the heart of being a healthy friend. Absolutely. Because when that's the center, it shows you where you have to sacrifice.
That's good. I think that word sacrifice is huge too. And that's what Jesus modeled for us. So Frank, we'll come to you for this next one. What's a few things that you can do to be a healthy parent? And we'll also include the idea of parenthood in there, right? Like as a church, we often talk about that even if you don't have children, like you still can engage in this parenthood concept of raising the next generation for the Lord. How do we be healthy in those types of relationships?
That's a good question. I think one, um, your kid, the person you're discipling, investing in, will not fulfill you. And I think last time we talked about that, but right, like so many parents, I think, are like trying to live the childhood they never got through their kid, or trying to make their kid what they never were. And I'm like, to be healthy, you just have to let your kid be your kid. And like, obviously, you teach them and instruct them, but like, you're not trying to force them who you want to be. You're trying to push them towards what God wants them to be. And I think that's a big one. The sacrifice is big, right? Like 95% of the tension with my kids is they don't want to, or they want to do something that just disrupts my comfort, right? Like if they want to play with a cup of water, I don't like it because they might spill it. But in the grand scheme of things, is it a big deal if I wipe up some water on the floor? Like for them, it's learning motor skills and all these things that are incredibly important. But for me, I'm like, I just view how it hurts me or like makes my life. And I'm like, all right, dude, like wipe up water, whatever. It's not a big deal. And you're building a memory with your kid that they're going to remember forever. Is that really worth it just to be able to keep the floor dry? But it takes, again, sacrifice, selflessness of like, even if the worst happens and they spill the water or they get some crayon on the table, right? It doesn't matter that much. A table is replaceable. Time with my kids is not, but it's hard to see that when you're in the moment.
Yeah. So those are some good ones. Angela, what about a few things you can do to be a healthy coworker, or for our next gen out there, maybe a good classmate as they're, with that's kind of their job for right now?
It's true. This is an interesting one. There are days when, in fact, it's probably most days, my coworkers are who I spend the most time with, sometimes more than my family. And I've found worked the same place for 18 years. Some of those people I've known at this point for a very long time. And I've found that humbleness goes a long way. I don't know about you guys, but I'm going to mess up. I'm going to hurt people. I'm going to make decisions that impact people negatively. And I think leading with grace is going to go a long way to keep those relationships open. Again, it never hurts to love big whenever you can. So I think we're seeing some themes
Yeah,
here.
definitely a
But
pattern.
yeah, humbleness especially, of just being willing to admit it was your faults and lead with that goes a long way.
Speaking of humbleness too, she's understating how much she kills it at this. No, for real. Like, she's talking about life together, right? Some of her coworkers have had kids and then they're sick or they need to take one to the hospital. She's like the first one to show up and care for them while they take kid to the hospital. Or a family member passes, she's the first one bringing food. So I mean, she really does live this really well. And I think it's something that is important for us, again, as followers of Jesus, to live that way.
Absolutely. So, Frank, would you talk a little bit about being a healthy spouse? What might that look like?
So it's interesting. I think my first answer to this would just be priorities, and you'll be like, huh? But right, like I do believe like I love Jesus most, and then it's Rachel, but it's hard to do that, especially when you have kids, right? It's easy to put kids there, or church ministry, or vocation, or job, whatever you do there. But like honestly, keeping her where she belongs in the priority list is incredibly important, because everything doesn't want to do that. But like at the end of the day, right, like if my relationship with her isn't healthy, nothing is. And so prioritize date nights. You know, we got to do that last night and it was fun just to talk and catch up in life without our kids pulling on us and asking us, and prioritize that. Have fun, laugh together, right? Life is hard. There's always tension around, who wants to sing clean, who doesn't. Maybe that's just us. But like, laugh, have fun. Like, those things aren't a big deal. Enjoy life. See the good in them, not the bad. We talked about being gracious to people closest, right? I'm often the toughest on her. And so I have to teach myself, be gracious, be kind. This stuff isn't a big deal. It's how God made her. She's amazing. Why am I choosing to see this? And yeah.
Good. So, Andrew, we'll come back to you for one more round here. What are a few things someone can do to be a healthy church member?
I think a big thing is just try to take it deeper than just seeing people on Sunday. This isn't, you're not gonna be able to do this for every member of the church, but I think there are gonna be people that you get closer to, that you gravitate towards, and being willing to. It's funny because as adults, there's kind of like the thing that goes around of like, how do you make adult friendships? And I think like, especially as people come new to the church and you don't want to seem weird and like too pushy, but also like these are people that you can develop relationships with, but it takes risk and it takes a lot of times if you're the person that's in the church, you're the one extending that branch. And it's hard putting yourself out there, maybe it's just me, is difficult sometimes. But I think being willing to go out of your way to meet someone, have lunch with them, get to know their story. That's a great place to start when it's someone new. Just find out how they know Jesus, how they came to know him. And just then I think as those relationships deepen, being willing to go out of the way to meet a need if the opportunity arises. Again, if we're the church, we should be the ones stepping up, meeting needs. And then I think, honestly, to plug Dave and Pipeline, like get involved with this. If there's someone new to the church and you're getting to know them and they need some support in getting to know Jesus, this Pipeline exists so that you can walk through with them. And that would just be a great way. It'll help you grow. You'll come, maybe it's your second time going through it. God will always teach you something new, and you get to walk it through with someone from the church and help them, hopefully see them come to know Jesus more, which is just a great gift.
Absolutely. So, I think we've seen some common themes throughout this, right? It's this idea of love, but through sacrifice and humility and investment and time have kind of been some of the major themes. And I think something for us to remember is like all these relationships give us the opportunity to model the gospel. Like when we lose it with a coworker or our spouse or our kid or whoever, right? And then we go and we ask for forgiveness. It's an opportunity to model the gospel. When they mess up, right? It's out. So like we have these opportunities just to point back to Jesus over and over again. It's one of the gifts of that. But let's just say there's somebody watching and they're saying, hey, look, I want to be healthy in any of these areas, but the other person might not want to. Maybe my coworker really doesn't want to be healthy, or my friend or my spouse, whatever the case may be. What would you say to them?
Keep pursuing health. just keep at it. I think that would be the first thing I would say, because it's very easy if the person you're connected to does not want to pursue health to just get dragged down by that. But if you feel like God put that on your heart, please, please, please keep pursuing it. I think you will have to then make some decisions following that, but keep pursuing it.
Yeah, you can get healthy if the other person doesn't want to. It might make it more difficult.
Yeah.
Because you're going to want to keep getting pulled back into cycles and patterns that you've built, but it's possible. And so I would say, like, if that's you, don't give up. Keep going, and set boundaries, right? I'm saying that a lot, but they're important. Set boundaries around friendships, things like that. And you're about to ask this, but, like, I feel like it flows there of, like, sometimes it's necessary to cut relationships. Like, if you have friendships that are pulling you away from living who Jesus made you to be, then you honestly need to think through that, right? I say this all the time. You're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? Look at your life right now. Are those people making you healthy? Are they helping you become who you want to be? And if not, then, like, you need to think through that. And it doesn't even mean, like, cut people off totally. But if you're with somebody 5 days a week and they're not helping you, maybe you hang out with them every couple weeks, and, like, you hang out and maybe you laugh, they're fun, something like that, but you're not letting them dictate where your life goes.
I think with that too, not every personality feels this, but there are people that are fixers, and you will do everything in your power to try and change and fix someone. And you need to let that go, because there are going to be people that you can't fix, that you can't change. And all you're going to do is just make yourself more stressed out and unhealthy trying to fix them.
It takes a lot of wisdom, right, to
Yeah,
navigate these areas. Like,
Yep.
when do you pull back? When do you, it's hard. So we need help from the Lord on that. One final question for us, and I appreciate you guys' answers. It's really, I think, crystallized for us what it looks like and how much of a challenge this is, right? This is not easy. What role does counseling play, perhaps, in healthy relationships?
I mean, it's important. Like, if you're not healthy, your relationships won't be healthy. And again, I think that's the problem. A lot of times we enter into these things unhealthy, looking for someone to fill a void, meet a need, something like that. And again, it's not that these relationships won't be fun, but, like, are they healthy? Are they making me better? Are they making me more like Jesus? And again, family of origin, we talked about it earlier, plays a huge deal, right? If you grew up in a family that just wasn't healthy and communicating and things like that, counseling helps you unpack some of that stuff that's just really deep wired into your brain. And so, and again, maybe you've had trauma through relationships, right? Counseling helps you work through that, where you're able to be seen again and not just feel like I have to hide who I am forever because of something that happened. And so I think counseling is really important.
All right. So get to know you for today. What are you currently watching or streaming, or wish you were watching and streaming if time doesn't allow?
I was gonna say, I've watched Frozen on repeat a lot.
I mean, that's not the worst.
Classic.
It's bad.
I love
That
Frozen.
movie is painful for me.
There's a lot of ice.
There's a lot of ice. Ellie still gets freaked out by that part.
Oh, yeah.
I don't like when things are frozen. Like, that's the name of the movie, kid. The thing we stream the most is probably, like, Madagascar, A Little Wild. We watch that a lot. It's fun. It's not, like, terrible.
In the kids' era.
It's the kids.
Yeah, you were definitely in
my
your kids' era.
Yeah.
Well, I was happy that a couple weeks ago a new season of Great British Baking Show started. So I'm enjoying a couple this week. Somebody that I really liked got sent home, so it was a little sad. But I love watching them
Build a
have to
bond.
bake. You do, because they're in the kitchen.
You're rooting for 'em.
Really do. You start rooting for them. So yeah, it's just a good one for the family. Lots of good bakes.
Good. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this episode. Go ahead, text your discipler, maybe identifying some areas where there's health or unhealth, or one of the ways you want to kind of take some steps towards health. And you'll be able to talk with them a little more when you meet together. But come on back for our next episode. Great day, everybody.